So hello everyone, my name is Emily Vivian and I'm the technical manager for this session on contributing to sustainable food systems with our online toolkit and community, presented by Stacey Nordin and Edith Callahan. So thank you all for taking part in ANH 2022. We look forward to a robust and interactive session this afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are. So just a quick reminder that everything you might need to access the conference materials and program can be found on the ANH Academy website at anhacademy.org/ANH2022. So yeah, now over to you, Stacia. Thank you.
And actually it's over to me. I'm going to be, no, that's just fine. I'm going to be starting us off. So thank you, Emily, for that great introduction, and hello everyone that's here with us today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Edith Callahan. I'm actually a business professor working at Acadia University and studying food systems. And I'm here today with Stacia Nordin. So Stacia is the coordinator for our ICDA Sustainable Food Toolkit that we'll be introducing you to today. I also want to acknowledge the work of Liesl Carlson, who is a dietitian, nutritionist, who is a professor here at Acadia University and has largely been steering this project from early days. She just was not able to join us today. But a lot of the research that has gone into creating this project has been coming out of her brilliant mind in collaboration with me and a bunch of other people. I also want to acknowledge that neither Stacia nor I are being paid for this work of presenting to you today. There's no conflict of interest. And I am presenting to you today from the land of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And I am just so grateful for being able to present to you from this space and from this land. So with that, I will jump into our presentation for today. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with ICDA, but it's the International Confederation of Dietetics Association. And we're going to talk to you about a toolkit that we have worked to create for them and the research that went into creating this toolkit. So, oh yes, here's how I advance. So just a quick overview of what ICDA is. It is and sorry, I am going to stop my video to get there we go. So it's a international membership organization of 46 dietetics associations. You see them listed here on the right-hand side of the screen. It's the largest body of dietetics professionals worldwide. It was established in 2000 after about 50 years of collaboration before then. It is also well affiliated with the Asian Federation of Dietetics Associations, the European Federation of Association of Dietitians, and the International Union of Nutritional Sciences. So if any of you would like to know more about ICDA, the web information is right here. So we got into this, actually, before I talk about that, our 1-hour presentation today, we're going to introduce the sustainability initiative that was the grounding for the toolkit. Then we'll move into discussing the toolkit and what it is, some of the key areas of it. We'll talk about how the toolkit can help dietitians understand the relationship between the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, and their practice, and also introduce you to our emerging research section and the case studies section. We're also going to talk about opportunities to collaborate amongst dietitians, nutritionists, and between dietitian, nutritionists, and other sectors of the food economy or the food environment. And we will have opportunities for reflection, discussion, and wrap up at the end. So where this project came from was about 6 years ago. Liesl Carlson and I got together from our different sectors of education and food, and talked about sustainable food and the problems of achieving a sustainable food system. And we were really thinking about what the vision of success for a sustainable food system would look like. And also wondering the degree to which dietitians have a collective understanding of A, what a sustainable food system could look like, and B, what their role in achieving that would be. So when we started this research, we were loosely basing our ideas of sustainable food system on this image that you see here. It is from a research project that I was involved in about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe, that looked at how do we engage community members in sustainable food. And the understanding here is that there's a number of aspects of our food system that are all interrelated and all critical parts of our food system. So with this as our basis, we launched into a research project to understand how dietitians and nutritionists understood this. And before I get to that, I want to just take a moment to ask you all to reflect on, Stacia, you have oh, there we go. On what you think your role is to play in supporting a sustainable food system, and what might hinder you from doing so. So we'll just take like 30 seconds, I will be quiet, to just think about what your role in sustainable food could be and what hinders you from moving forward on this. And we'll come back to this at the end of the presentation. Okay, I see some people writing, and that's awesome. So you have your wheels are turning, and that's great, but also in the interest of time, I'm going to move on, and please feel free to continue writing notes as we go forward. But these two questions are really, were really critical to us in designing the toolkit that Stacia is going to get into in just a second. We wanted to understand the role that dietitians, nutritionists saw themselves playing and what hindered them from making progress. So ultimately, after we asked, we did a survey, actually a modified Delphi survey with members of ICDA, with, I think it was initially around 72 people from around the world participated in an ongoing discussion around what sustainable food system could look like. And this and vision of success, roles to play, and what hinders progress ended up in a Building Common Ground report that we produced for ICDA, and you can access it through our toolkit. But the sustainable food vision of success is as follows. Sustainable food systems nourish all people now and into the future with sufficient, nutritious, affordable, tasty, diverse, and culturally appropriate food. Such food systems support physical and mental health while preserving, promoting, and respecting the integrity of ecological and social systems. So we were actually really happy to see such a broad perspective of what a sustainable food system is. And we also understood from folks that there's a lot that hinders dietitians and people from achieving sustainable food. So we know that the current food system is unsustainable, it's broken. So food insecurity, poor dietary health patterns, contamination, environmental contamination, occupational hazards, impacted further by unsanitary conditions, climate change, and other negative environmental impacts, and poverty. And we clearly saw from the data that we collected that dietitians and nutritionists are not only do they have an important role to play, but they are key in disrupting this negative feedback loop. So further in our research, we came to understand that there's this larger ecological system within which is nested our social system, within which is nested, we can understand this as subcomponents of a food system. to which dietitians all play an important role of influence. So if we think about the food production system and agriculture and aquaculture and seafood, dietitians and nutritionists participate in research, development, and promotion of food products. With respect to health systems, dietitians and nutritionists focus on health promotion, disease prevention through nutrition-based programming, providing nutrition care for clients, and managing institutional food procurement and provision. With respect to community demand systems, they guide food choices through nutritional education related to food, water, sanitation, etc. In the political realm, dietitians and nutritionists contribute to food and nutrition policy that maximizes outcome. And I will put in a side note, I loved what I heard earlier about we need to really politicize even more so our food system and our food conversations. So here's the realm where that operates. And then in our economic system, dietitian nutritionists advocate and drive innovations that promote healthier food and options through marketing, sales, promotions, and menu and recipe development. So there's lots of ways within the food system that dietitians and nutritionists are well positioned to foster change. And of course, there's many challenges to doing so. So our research came up with a number of distinct challenges to dietitians and nutritionists making change within their profession. So these two outside bubbles of our nested system, these are aspects of the food system that are challenging and impede progress towards sustainable food, but they're not really within the realm of dietitians and nutritionists being able to directly impact them. But in here, the question of a professional culture that supports sustainable food and creating a common ground of understanding sustainable food, that dietitians and nutritionists can impact, and also understanding the complexity of the topic and developing competence was something that ICDA really felt that they had a role to play in supporting this. So from this research is where was born the idea of creating our sustainable food toolkit, or sustainable food system toolkit, which I am now going to pass it over to Stacia to talk about some more. And Stacia, you just let me know if you want, how you want me to advance the slides, okay?
Okay, I will. I have been chit-chatting behind the scenes, so I was just finishing messaging Zachary, okay. And I'll continue later. So the vision for the toolkits for dietitians and nutritionists, this toolkit is for dietitians and nutritionists, and it's by dietitians and nutritionists. But if you're not a dietitian and nutritionist, don't worry. You can still use it and you can still contribute to it. But we really try and focus on dietitians and nutritionists and their role within the food system and how we interact with other people as well. And of course, it will take a second. While that's taking a second to move, watch the chat box. I put a link inside the chat box to both this toolkit and our presentation if you would like to download it from our Dropbox as well. So I'm going to walk through in 5 slides the basic overview of the toolkit. There are 5 main areas. So there's this welcome page on the left. That's what Edith just covered for you. So it's why we're doing it, what it is, and how you can possibly use, or we haven't gone too much into the how, but we will cover the how now. Then there's a section number 2 on about. Number 3 is on professional development. Number 4 is on resources, and number 5 is on our community of practice. So the next 4 slides will go over those. On the welcome page, some important, let's stay on the welcome page just for a minute, Edith. So on the right of the screen on the welcome page, at the top, there'll be languages. Right now we have the toolkit in 5 languages. We would really like to expand that over time. There is a login button, the little head, bobblehead, which is free. You do not have to log in until you get to number 5, the community of practice. There is a search feature, which we will show you how to use today. There is a newsletter that we put out monthly. It's called Grow, so you can sign up. We have the link on several pages now, not just the front page. There is a link to the discussion forum, which is underneath number 5, so that you can connect with other interested colleagues. And then also on the front page are recent updates to the toolkit. So now we're in the second section, about, and you can see the drop-down list. So when you click, this is one thing I would like to update a little bit on the toolkit. I joined as coordinator this year for the toolkit, and I work 1 to 2 days a week. So I work part-time, but I always try and be at your beck and call when you need me. When you click on the banner at the top, you'll see that it changes color slightly to a dark blue. It's not very evident sometimes where you are in the toolkit, but right now we're in About, and there are 3 parts. You can read more in detail about the project, about the team. So we have 70 people altogether from the beginning that have contributed, and this is the core team that you can see on the slide. Right now from 18 of our 46 countries that are continuing to help with the toolkit and do presentations like Edith and I are doing, and to update the content. And then the last part of the About is you can go deeper into the sustainable food systems, which is that picture that Edith showed you. Let's go to the professional development. So this is area 3. And for some reason, when it downloaded, it seems like our little clicks aren't working. So this was supposed to come in 3 clicks. So I'll walk you through it instead. The first thing that you show up at is a self-assessment, is the first thing. So on the left-hand side of your screen, just below the PD, it says PD, Sustainable Self-Assessment. This is to guide you. It's to help you sort through the toolkit to find your level and your focus, kind of give you some footing and a starting point from where you are. So the first slide on the sustainability self-assessment form, and I have it open on my screen as well, which I hope you do as well. The first part of it asks you your background in sustainability. So we have it at 3 levels. You're brand new to the topic. Then the middle is, I have a good working knowledge, but I want to understand the relevance to my practice. And then the last one is, I have a really good understanding, but I want to know how to implement. So it's more focused on, okay, I'm convinced, give me things that I can do. So that's kind of the first part of the self-assessment. Then the slide on the left that says professional roles, you start selecting what roles and topics that most fit you. The more things you pick, the more answers you'll get to guide you. So really try and focus in. You can always go back to your self-assessment and change it over time. Then at the very bottom where the orange button is for submit, you can add your email address. We do nothing with that email address. And you can tick that we can use this as data. Again, this goes into a research. We don't sell it to anyone. We just track your answers without your name so that we can see what level people are at and what they're picking and what their interest is and maybe where we should go, give us direction with the toolkit. Then, so that's self-assessment. So on the right-hand side, after self-assessment, it says PD learning modules, and then it has a drop-down with these 3 learning modules. This is a step-by-step reflection, reading, questions. There's no certificate, it's all self-learning, but the first one is about what are sustainable food systems in module 1. Then you go on to module 2, how are sustainable food systems and diets relevant to nutrition and dietetics? And number 3, then how can I contribute? And we're going to walk through some of that today. So area 4 on the next slide takes us into, and we are going to focus a lot of our case studies that we show you on this. So we're going to look at the SDG briefs for dietitians and nutritionist roles, and then Edith is going to look at the case studies, and then we'll also look at the research button. So let's move on from this one, Edith, and go to area 5. Area 5 is the community of practice. So when you click on the community of practice, the first thing you'll click on is the regional contacts. So this goes back to the team. They are organized by their country. And then the next one is sharing your story, and then a discussion forum. Once you get into the discussion forum, that's where you have to log in if you want to comment. You can read other people's comments, but you can't start commenting until you log in, and the registration is free. And we'll actually go into that a little bit at the end as well. So let's move into some examples. Example 1. So if you have your page open right now, you could go to the resource tab and go down to SDG Briefs, Dietitian Nutrition Roles, and you will end up on this page. We are going to select the SDG for responsible consumption and production, number 12. And it opens up as a PDF. You have two choices. You can either download it directly to your computer, or you can use it online. So the first page says responsible production and consumption, and it goes over the basics of the global targets for the SDGs, and then it goes into how does that affect me as a nutritionist or dietitian. This particular brief looks at the different levels of consumption and production, and then gives an example from the British Dietetic Association at the top of your screen, and some key points. Then actually at the end, so I'll skip to the end there, the littlest one, there's a lot of recommendations for further reading and also references. There's actually one more page of references I didn't include on this one. All of the briefs look similar, but they're all different depending on that SDG. So what shocked me in this, so I've got my little cat emoji being shocked there with a red arrow, is how much food we waste. So if we move on to the next slide, something may pull out at you, but that's what we're going to look at today. We'll use the search button. So if you remember from our banner at the top, the search button was on the right. Once I start typing in waste in the search, the banner opens up and pulls down all of the areas in the toolkit that have waste. So this only shows the first few. What I find best to do is to go to the bottom and click View All. So I did that. I clicked View All. I chose an emerging research summary. So it was under Resources. All I had to do was click on it. It took me directly to the red arrow on the bottom right, where it says a systemic review of food waste. I opened it up, and it brought up a document on the right, which gives an overview of that research. The nice thing about emerging research summaries under the resources is a lot of nutritionists that I work with, in fact, I didn't tell you really who I am and what I am at the beginning. I totally forgot about that. I actually live in Malawi. I've lived in Malawi for 25 years, but I am in the United States briefly with my family. And in Malawi, I am on the land of the Chewa. It's a Bantu tribe. And here, I've been here for 2 months in Wisconsin, and I am on the land of the Ho-Chunk. And I actually went and visited some Ho-Chunk gardens last week, and I'm really delving into indigenous foods here and establishing them at my husband's parents' house, which I think they're happy about. I don't know. We're slowly going in that direction. Okay, back to emerging research. So a lot of people where I live in Malawi do not have access to universities. They don't have access to journals. So the nice thing about the emerging research summaries is we've taken out and we've worked with the authors and editors sometimes of those journals to pull out all the relevant information from a publication and make it more accessible to people around the world. This one that we're looking at right now on waste happens to be an open access link, but a lot of times there aren't open access links. So the first page covers what the question is in the research, what the bottom line is for us as nutritionists, and then there's a lot more information, but I wanted to highlight what's at the bottom. Again, there's relevant external links if you want to keep reading, if you want to look at tools on food waste. Another thing that we're doing is we're doing searches for you. When we see what people are using, we're grouping them together so you don't have to go through the search function all the time, and you'll see more buttons coming up on different topics. And Edith, I will hand back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Stacia. So I'm now going to talk about case studies briefly. The case studies you will find under resources. And case studies we have on our website as or on the toolkit as a way for participants of the toolkit to share success stories with each other, or maybe even share challenges that they're currently working their way through. But they are really designed around the 7 barriers to sustainable food that the participants of our early research talked about. So on the case studies, if you click through to the case studies page, you'll see tags that indicate which one of the barriers is being addressed. So for example, if you were doing research or a project and you were curious about lack of infrastructure, you could do a search on that tag and find all of the case studies that related to that. But also the tags are very useful for people doing any sorts of work. So at any point, I'll note again, if you're in the case studies in the toolkit and you feel like you're getting lost and you can't get back to where you were before, there's 2 good mechanisms for finding what you want. One is the search tab that Stacia talked about earlier. And also you can just email the coordinator. Because the link for the coordinator is on the bottom of every page, and Stacia is eminently responsive to questions about our toolkit and how to use it. So let's say you were looking at case studies and you wanted to have an understanding of how menu change could affect change towards sustainable food system. So you could do a search on menu change, which I've done here, and you'll see that there's overall 82 results from the search on just menu change. 5 of them relate to case studies, and 71 of them relate to reports. So there's lots of information on how you can use menus for change towards sustainable food systems. But let's say you wanted to look into some of the case studies to see how maybe you could contact someone to see what they did. We're going to focus in just quickly on this one, sustainable food sustainability and nutrition in violence prevention. So this was an initiative done by nutritionist Patricia Thompson in Jamaica, and she saw a couple of different problems in her community coming together that she could use food and menu change to provide a solution for this. So if you go into the case studies, you'll see at a glance what each case study is about. You'll have a history of the context of the problem and the background that was going on wherever this case study took place. The case studies then go on to document the intervention that was pursued. And many of the case studies actually will have tools associated with them that you can click through, and also ways to contact the person or institute that was behind the initiative. So these, we currently have 12 case studies on our toolkit, and we would love to create more case studies to provide more opportunity for people to learn from each other. So now I'm going to hand it back to Stacia to talk about opportunities for collaboration.
And I'm already feeling opportunities for collaboration because several of you have already taken this self-assessment. I'm getting little beeps in my email that I get when people take the self-assessment. So that's one way to start collaborating is come use the toolkit. So I wanted to remind you, this is not my toolkit, it's not Edith's toolkit. It's our toolkit for the world, and we want to keep it that way. I actually was involved in this toolkit when it started with that Delphi inquiry. There was a Delphi inquiry just before that, and then they started doing more of a Delphi inquiry. which is a great process. If you don't know it, contact Edith or I for more information about it. And then I did, over the years, while I was working on a different USAID program with the University of Illinois, I was contributing to this toolkit with case studies. I also did a podcast at one point to talk about animal foods. So Zach, that's why I was really interested in talking to you. That really brought a lot of things to light, that people are very narrow on animal foods. So this toolkit is for dietitian nutritionists and by dietitian nutritionists, usually, mostly. We welcome non-dietitian and nutritionists with content that's relative to us. That's my key job. There is so much information out there on sustainable food systems, but I don't want to overwhelm my audience. And I like to go a lot deeper and get in the weeds of things more than other people. So we want to keep things at a balance. We want the toolkit to be curated, so it's very easy for you to go in and get a quick, or to take that next step and go to a middle level, or to go deeper. I mean, we'll always give people that option, and we love your feedback. So get involved in what complements your work and your needs. It's not supposed to add to your day in terms of, oh, I have to go do this. It is all about, this makes my work better by being involved. So in the blue section in the middle, kind of refers to the screenshot on the right under the resources. There are so many places you can get involved in contributing a case study, like Patricia did from Jamaica. I actually worked in Jamaica 27 years ago and worked with Patricia, so it's so nice to be connected with her still. And then there's all sorts of other resources when you start delving into the toolkit that you could say, oh, I'd like to do this. And we will even help you write things if you need it. Invite us to do a webinar like we're doing today, or a workshop. We have several coming up. We have one with Sweden coming up in September, and we've just been funded to do some in Ireland as well that will be very interesting in 2023. Translate for us. So we have 5 languages, but we have 46 countries. We can afford 5 translations at the moment, but we would love help with translations, or submit things in local languages. We want as much diversity and reach as we can. The section in green refers to the bottom under professional development. Nutrition and dietetic training is a really important leverage point, and that is what I'm working on this month. There's already a collaboration of different trainers, teachers, dietetics educators that are integrating sustainability in their curriculum. So we want to build a page just on integrating or doing more of that and helping people do more of that in their universities and schools. We really need researchers to generate metrics for both clarity and communication and advocacy and all the other things that you need research for. So this slide is one of the few that's only for ICDA members. So you would go back to Edith's slide and look at the 46 countries and talk to your Nutrition and Dietetic Association. I've been a member of ICDA for 33 years. Because I was a member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So I would go to ICDA conferences every 4 years. I left the Academy 3 years ago, so I'm actually not a member now. But the Nutrition Society of Malawi has just become registered. So we are working towards applying for membership in the ICDA as well. I think Thailand was the last one to join us. We were 45 until recently. So if you are a member of ICDA, which I hope you are, and I hope you look it up and become linked if after this, you are eligible for a grant. We just gave 4 grants to Australia, Germany, Greece, and Spain, and those will be up on the website. If you got our newsletter, it's in the newsletter what they're doing with that money. The next deadline is September 15th. So if you click on the tab under resources, the first resource, so you see it's a little bit darker blue, NDA Sustainability Grants, that tab is for you. Really easy application process. Next opportunity, and this again is open to anyone. Contribute to the discussion forum. So I've put the COP, Community of Practice. You could become you could lead a discussion or start a group. You could share country lessons So that's COP2. If you click on Share Sustainability in Practice, you can add something directly to the toolkit. Number 3, you could become a regional contact for this. Oh, yeah, this is only ICDA members as well, to become a regional contact. And you can share information about the toolkit or the newsletter within your networks. And there's many more. So these are just ideas, but you tell us what you can do, what you want to do, what you struggle with. And that is on the final slide.
All right, thank you, Stacia. But before we go to the next slide, I just want to make another note that I think is pretty clear from everything that we've said, but I just really want to underscore what you said before, that this is built by dietitians and nutritionists for dietitians and nutritionists and other people who want to work with them. I am not a dietitian or nutritionist. I'm a business professor interested in sustainable food systems. So I've found a way to work with this and with my buddy dietitians to help promote sustainable food systems. This toolkit is also 100% funded by ICDA. And it's the funding for it is really built, or it pays for a coordinator position, and it pays for the grants, and it pays for basic website upkeep. So we don't have a ton of money to make great changes, but we always are working with ICDA to improve the toolkit as it is. So any suggestions we have for that are always welcome. So I would like to go back to our reflections. We asked at the beginning of the presentation, what role would you like to play in supporting sustainable food systems, and what hinders you from doing so? So I would actually just like to open the floor. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'd like to go back to this question. And so if we could go back to our participants and any volunteers to answer those questions, or if you have any other questions for us, yeah, we'd love to hear what you're thinking about our project and this program and how you could get involved. And Stacia, I don't know if there's anything in the chat that maybe we should talk about too.
I think I have been answering people who put things there. A lot of things have been directly to my inbox,
Okay.
so other people will not be able to see them. But I've put up here on the screen possible discussion things that people might want to share on their role or hinders or anything or questions.
Sure, I'll jump in. So especially thinking from a kind of nutrition dietetic point of view, I guess something that would really concern me in affecting sustainable food systems would be just human choice and human behavior. As we know that sustainable food systems is not at the forefront of many people's purchasing decisions when it comes to what they eat and what they grow. So yeah, that would definitely be something that I want to know a bit more about.
Yeah, so in that, Emily, you mean like almost the culture of food and why people are choosing to, I don't know, I'm thinking of a North American diet. So, why do we have Pop-Tarts in the morning for breakfast when they're really just like sugar sticks and maybe not the best way to start your day, and then other things like that. So also looking behind the scene and what is supporting or encouraging both positive behaviors and negative behaviors.
Sure.
Yeah. And I believe, Stacia, we have some articles in our emerging research that speak to the cultural aspect of food behavior and food choice.
We do. And Emily, I added a few things there. Cost, availability, taste, and marketing are quite on people's minds when they're in the store. Being here for 2 months in America, it always shocks me. I've been doing it for 25 years, but this time shocked me more than ever. Grocery stores are very confusing. There's so much choice now. I would probably add as well, too many messages. It's just this overwhelming of what do I pick? And I've just been like learning about bagels. learning about alternative proteins, you know, for all of a sudden vegan something and gluten-free. So yeah, it's a very confusing environment. So sustainability is just one more layer. How do we bring that message on? Is it a little icon, you know, that we add, and how do you? So there are some. There was a new one that came out today, and I flagged it to possibly put in the toolkit. They are doing informatics for agroecology to see if they can link agroecology to the marketplace, because there's, you know, we can't all afford organic. That's another one that's really high. So I agree with you. It's one to keep working on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions about the toolkit, how you can get involved in it? I'm also wondering, if there's no direct questions, I'm wondering about the people on this call, because looking at the faces quickly, I don't know any of you. And I'm wondering how many, are there any people on this call who are not dietitians or nutritionists, but are working actively with them, and maybe you see how this toolkit could help do that, or maybe ways to adjust the toolkit to help you out more?
In the chat box?
I struggle with the near equivalence of sustainable diets as vegetarian, vegan, when really animal source foods are such a great source of micronutrients. I would like to see more discussion on this with local communities. Absolutely. Helen, is there, so this is a topic that we talk about with respect to on the toolkit. We don't give a direct, like, we think meat is good or we think meat is bad. What the toolkit does is try to share some of the most recent research and initiatives around the discussion of meat sources and you know, feedlots versus wild meat, and all the various sources of protein that there could be. So Helen, is there work that you're currently doing in this area?
No, not really. It's just something that I come across a lot in the among those that work in sustainable diets in the nutrition group at LCHTM where I work, and it seems like there's a lot on, you know, vegetarian diets and almost like making them equivalent to sustainable diets, which I can see from, you know, high income country perspective, but when you're talking about, you know, poor subsistence farming communities, it just doesn't feel relevant. And what I'd love to see is some sort of like synthesis on that, any sorts of synthesis on that kind of literature, and be able to kind of pull out more of that discussion, because it feels like there's not enough being a sort of in-depth discussion on that.
Mm-hmm. And Stacia, okay, are you going to one of our resources right now?
I was going to do that, yeah. Under existing resource database, that is the first hot topic we did actually, is animal protein and substitutes. We only did it last month, and when you click on it, it goes to, I don't know if this is big enough for you to see. It goes to, there's an increased interest in animal proteins and substitutes. Systems vary greatly for different animal proteins and substitutes. Some are sustainable and some are not, so it leaves work for consumers. The most important thing is diversity. You know, there's a huge diversity of animal and plant proteins from water. So Zach, this goes to what I want to bring in more water foods, aquatic foods, land, and then there are foods from the air as well. Living in Malawi really broadened my idea of what food is. So learn and encourage diversity, especially species indigenous to your area. They're being lost because we promote soy, orange flesh sweet potato, moringa, like it should be planted everywhere in the world, which isn't true. And the fourth point, and this is a summary by me, and it's balance and track. So it's balancing animals and plants in the environment and other parts of the food system, and where there's an imbalance, symptoms will emerge that need to be fixed. If we're unbalanced, we lose it. We have to have animals in our environment. So those were my opinions on the topic, and we would like to do a lot more of these. So you can see that was posted May 21st by me. Thanks.
Great minds.
In the chat box, Benedicta, I'm into ICT and would want to see how ICT can be relevant in this discussion. Number one, the whole toolkit is ICT. The whole development of the toolkit was ICT. And if you go into a lot of the resources, you know, the webinars, the workshops, the podcasts, even the professional development, a lot of the learning modules rely on ICT. Where I think it's weak is in the tracking and monitoring. I would like to do, I'm an ICT person myself, even though I'm a dietitian, but I would love to do some of the mapping from a stakeholder standpoint, so community sort of participatory mapping to make sense of people, data, organizations, things that are going on. We are doing a session July 31st with the Society for Nutrition Education and Behavior, and the whole conference is based on informatics. So you might like that session, and I will pop it in the chat while Edith looks at the next question.
Okay, Destin says, great question, Helen. I was considering around the different contexts and how we can adapt the tool on varying food environments. It was great to see diversity reflective of a range of geographic contexts and social contexts among guiding principles of the tool. Could you provide examples of making use of this tool in varying contexts, such as rural versus urban in low and middle income country? Stacia, I'm going to hand the answer to that over to you.
So I think the first thing I would say is we try very hard on every page to keep it simple. You see how there is no picture on this page, but we tried to decorate it pretty anyway so that it's still attractive, but really working on small kilobytes. I already talked about the emerging resource database. This helps people in low and middle income countries access information that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. We are trying to find another way to communicate with people around the world. Right now, ICDA only uses LinkedIn. I was not a LinkedIn user until last year. I've been a member for a long time, but it's like the place you go to look for a job or look for somebody to work for you. It's kind of expensive for my colleagues to get on it. It's a high bandwidth sort of place, but we're trying to think, what could we use as a group? Malawi, we use WhatsApp. You know, do we start WhatsApp groups on this topic? In Asia, I use WeChat. That's very common there. So in our last newsletter, we actually posed this question, is how can we connect with you better? People are very busy. They don't have time for one more thing. And you'll see our community of practices, it's only just started. You know, this is only a year and a half, 2 years old, year and a half. Yeah, so it's an open question, Emily, not Emily, Destin. But it's something we are definitely trying to make sure we're open and accessible. If you have any ideas, please pass them on. Thanks.
Yeah, and so I'll just add to that also that, you know, I think that there are some real issues between rural food sustainability and urban food sustainability and what diets look like in relation to that. And if it's that question, or maybe some other questions, when you're using our toolkit and you see, you know what, I would actually really love to see different tags in here rather than the ones you have, or in addition to the ones you have. We are open to feedback. As we've said before, this is built for dietitians and nutritionists by dietitians and nutritionists. So any sort of feedback would be really helpful for us. I see that Emily put a comment in here about some really nice poster presentations during today's conference, understanding which Indigenous foods are no longer being consumed and why in both Africa and India. Then onto the potential of these foods, these underutilized Indigenous foods for improving nutrition and sustainability. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we actually have just a few more minutes. I don't see another conversation here, but Stacia, I'm wondering if you wanted to make any last minute comments about the project and your role in it. I will say Stacia is largely steering the bus now, and I'm so grateful to her insight and her energy in terms of helping us move this forward. So over to you, Stacia.
Sure. I was just actually looking for, and I found it in our last newsletter of upcoming things going on. So going back to Destin, this was the question that we asked people: what platform would you use for the SFS toolkit? I'm going to change this question a little to see if I can get some more answers. It's not very clear what people want. I'm okay with being on 5 or 6 platforms if that's what works for people, but I also have to think about the coordinator for next year. So far we've had a coordinator a year, and we really want to keep it simple. So here's some sessions that we have just done. We are now here on the 7th annual agriculture, and this is the one that I wanted to share with you, coming up on ICT. I will give you the link to that. So I can't reiterate enough that it is our desire to give you what you need to get into sustainability, and our desire for you to share with us what you have. I think if we organize it and make sense of it, we're all going to grow together. And that's why we called the newsletter Grow. Is the only way forward is through coordination and collaboration with each other. There's so many little bits and pieces of things going on that confuses us. Let's pull it together. So thank you so much, Emily and Sylvia and Anna, for supporting us as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stacia and Edith, for this session, showcasing and talking us through this toolkit for helping nutritionists, dietetics, and, as you also highlighted, others better contribute towards sustainable food systems, which, as we're all very aware, is an absolutely essential and urgent agenda. So, of course, a big thank you also for all you guys for being here and participating. And I hope you all have a good rest of the day, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.